Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 249. Chapter 249. On the evening of the 1st of September, after his interview with Kutuzov, Count Raspatchin had returned to Moscow mortified and offended because he had not been invited to attend the Council of War, and because Kutuzov had paid no attention to his offer to take part in the defense of the city. Amazed also at the novel outlook revealed to him at the camp, which treated the tranquility of the capital and its patriotic fervor as not merely secondary but quite irrelevant and unimportant matters. Distressed, offended, and surprised by all this, Raspatchin had returned to Moscow. After supper he lay down on a sofa without undressing, and was awakened soon after midnight by a courier bringing him a letter from Kutuzov. This letter requested the Count to send police officers to guide the troops through the town, as the army was retreating to the Ryazan road beyond Moscow. This was not news to Raspatchin. He had known that Moscow would be abandoned not merely since his interview the previous day with Kutuzov on the Poklany Hill, but ever since the Battle of Borodino, for all the generals who came to Moscow after that battle had said unanimously that it was impossible to fight another battle, and since then the government property had been removed every night, and half the inhabitants had left the city with Raspatchin's own permission. Yet all the same, this information astonished and irritated the Count, coming as it did in the form of a simple note with an order from Kutuzov, and received at night, breaking in on his beauty sleep. When later on in his memoirs, Count Raspatchin explained his actions at this time, he repeatedly says that he was then actuated by two important considerations: to maintain tranquility in Moscow and expedite the departure of the inhabitants. If one accepts this twofold aim, all Raspatchin's actions appear irreproachable. Why were the holy relics, the arms, ammunition, gunpowder, and stores of corn not removed? Why were thousands of inhabitants deceived into believing that Moscow would not be given up and thereby ruined? To preserve the tranquility of the city, explains Count Raspatchin. Why were bundles of useless papers from the government offices and Leppich's balloon and other articles removed? To leave the town empty, explains Count Raspatchin. One need only admit that public tranquility is in danger, and any action finds the justification. All the horrors of the Reign of Terror were based only on solicitude for public tranquility. On what then was Count Raspatchin's fear for the tranquility of Moscow based in 1812? What reason was there for assuming any probability of an uprising in the city? The inhabitants were leaving it, and the retreating troops were filling it. Why should that cause the masses to riot? Neither in Moscow nor anywhere in Russia did anything resembling an insurrection ever occur when the enemy entered the town. More than 10,000 people were still in Moscow on the 1st and 2nd of September, and except for a mob in the governor's courtyard, assembled there at his bidding, nothing happened. It is obvious that there would have been even less reason to expect a disturbance among the people if after the Battle of Borodino, when the surrender of Moscow became certain, or at least probable, Raspatchin, instead of exciting the people by distributing arms and broadsheets, had taken steps to remove all the holy relics, the gunpowder, munitions, and money, and had told the population plainly that the town would be abandoned. Raspatchin, though he had patriotic sentiments, was a sanguine and impulsive man, who had always moved in the highest administrative circles and had no understanding at all of the people he supposed himself to be guiding. Ever since the enemy's entry into Smolensk, he had in imagination been playing the role of director of the popular feeling of the heart of Russia. Not only did it seem to him, as to all administrators, that he controlled the external actions of Moscow's inhabitants, but he also thought he controlled their mental attitude by means of his broadsheets and posters, written in a coarse tone which the people despise in their own class and do not understand from those in authority. Raspachin was so pleased with the fine role of leader of popular feeling, and had grown so used to it, that the necessity of relinquishing that role and abandoning Moscow without any heroic display took him unawares, and he suddenly felt the ground slip away from under his feet, so that he positively did not know what to do. Though he knew it was coming, he did not to the last moment wholeheartedly believe that Moscow would be abandoned, and did not prepare for it. The inhabitants left against his wishes. If the government offices were removed, this was only done on the demand of officials to whom the Count yielded reluctantly. He was absorbed in the role he had created for himself. As is often the case with those gifted with an ardent imagination, though he had long known that Moscow would be abandoned, he knew it only with his intellect. He did not believe it in his heart, and did not adapt himself mentally to this new position of affairs. All his painstaking and energetic activity, and how far it was useful and had any effect on the people is another question, had been simply directed towards arousing in the masses his own feeling of patriotic hatred of the French. But when events assumed their true historical character, when expressing hatred for the French in words proved insufficient, when it was not even possible to express that hatred by fighting a battle, when self-confidence was of no avail in relation to the one question before Moscow, when the whole population streamed out of Moscow as one man, abandoning their belongings and proving by that negative action all the depths of their national feeling, then the role chosen by Raspachin suddenly appeared senseless. He unexpectedly felt himself ridiculous, weak, and alone, with no ground to stand on. When, awakened from his sleep, he received that cold, peremptory note from Kutuzov, he felt the more irritated the more he felt himself to blame. All that he had been specially put in charge of, the state property which he should have removed, was still in Moscow, and it was no longer possible to take the whole of it away. Who is to blame for it? Who has let things come to such a pass? He ruminated. Not I, of course. I had everything ready. I had Moscow firmly in hand. And this is what they have let it come to. Villains, traitors, he thought, without clearly defining who the villains and traitors were, but feeling it necessary to hate those traitors, whoever they might be, who were to blame for the false and ridiculous position in which he found himself. All that night, Count Raspachin issued orders, for which people came to him from all parts of Moscow. Those about him had never seen the Count so morose and irritable. Your Excellency, the director of the Registrar's Department has sent for instructions. From the consistory, from the Senate, from the University, from the Foundling Hospital, the suffragan has sent, asking for information. What are your orders about the fire brigade? From the governor of the prison, from the superintendent of the lunatic asylum. All night long, such announcements were continually being received by the Count. To all these inquiries, he gave brief and angry replies, indicating that orders from him were not now needed, that the whole affair, carefully prepared by him, had been ruined by somebody, and that somebody would have to bear the whole responsibility for all that might happen. Oh, tell that blockhead, he said in reply to the question from the Registrar's Department, that he should remain to guard his documents. Now why are you asking silly questions about the fire brigade? They have horses. Let them be off to Vladimir, and not leave them to the French. Your Excellency, the superintendent of the lunatic asylum has come. What are your commands? My commands? Let them go away, that's all, and let the lunatics out into the town. When lunatics command our armies, God evidently means these other madmen to be free. In reply to an inquiry about the convicts in the prison, Count Raspachin shouted angrily at the governor, Do you expect me to give you 2 battalions which we have not got for a convoy? Release them. That's all about it. Your Excellency, there are some political prisoners. Meshkov. Vereshchagin. Vereshchagin. Hasn't he been hanged yet? Shouted Raspachin. Bring him to me. Alright, that concludes my reading of Chapter 249 of War and Peace. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 249. Steal something from the thief. Patient stoic mindfulness is the practical alchemy that transforms misfortune into character-building blessings. The Duke of Venice breaks off a little piece of this pelfish science to Brabantio, when that good man bemoans the loss of his daughter to the marriage bed of Othello. To mourn a mischief that is past and gone, counsels the Duke, is the next way to draw new mischief on. What cannot be preserved when fortune takes, patience or injury a mockery makes. The robbed that smiles steals something from the thief. He robs himself that spends a bootless grief. Bootless grief. That's an apt description of Count Raspachin in today's chapter, and it's all because he can't apply the Duke of Venice's advice. The Count is distressed, offended, and surprised that he has not been invited to attend Kutuzov's latest council of war. Then, when Kutuzov writes asking him to furnish troops to help facilitate the evacuation of Moscow, something Raspachin knows must happen, he gets even more irritated. Finally, as he tends to his administrative duties, he gives brief and angry replies to his underlings. These are not the reactions of a well-balanced man. Our question is how to be a little less Count and a little more Duke. From the very beginning of A Year of War and Peace, I've suggested that we be careful to distinguish between those things that are under our control and those things that are not under our control. Clearly, this is something Count Raspachin has been unable to do. Though he knew it was coming, writes Tolstoy, he did not to the last moment wholeheartedly believe that Moscow would be abandoned, and did not prepare for it. Even when he knows something bad is going to happen, the Count is still unable to prepare for it. He still cannot categorize it as something either within or without his control and respond accordingly. What if, however, unlike the Count, we are able to distinguish between what is and what is not under our control? How should we react to personal misfortune that we have no control over? Fortunately, adversity carries within it its own cure. Remember that each battering assault of misfortune, if properly defended against, builds up an attractive callus to protect against future attacks. With this in mind, it becomes not only possible, but encouraged to greet adversity with a smile and steal something from the thief. Daily Meditation. A tree is neither firm nor strong unless frequent winds blow against it. For it is strengthened by this very shaking, and fixes its roots more firmly. Those which grow in a sunny valley are easily broken. Seneca, on Providence. All right, that concludes my reading of and reflection on Chapter 249 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me today. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the show notes. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on Chapter 250. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.